Suffer the Fallen is the fifth full-length album from Cemetery Urn, a Melbourne, Australia-based death metal band. And I would say definitively death metal. It's a death metal band in the classic style that sings about death metal for the most part. They get creative with it here and there, but it's pretty straightforward in the sense that this is what I would consider canonical death metal. It's the mostly North American and European style influences, and an increasingly brutal style that developed throughout the '90s and was carried on by the right sort of folks throughout the post millennium space. Anyhow, so they started up back in about 2005 or so in terms of forming the idea. The band formed in 2006 proper, as far as I understand, and it was by way of folks from maybe better known sort of bestial or black death metal bands, Abominator and Bestial Warlust, and different folks from the scene at the time in Melbourne. And I guess this style was very different from what they had been doing otherwise. This is I guess what I would have called atmospheric death metal back in the early 2010s or so, where there's a heavy component of influence from bands like Incantation, Immolation, and the evolution of Morbid Angel over time. So very much riff-based music, blasphemic, aggressive, brutal in most respects, certainly compared to most of what was around at the time and what is around now in droves. So that style has been upheld for 5 albums, but it's been different on every record. Their style, generally, you could associate what they do with bands like Blaspherian, Drawn and Quartered, Dead Congregation, of course, but they're a little bit different. There's always been a little bit of what I would consider Angel Corpse influence in their sound, and you hear it when they go for those kind of bestial, aggressive moments. And I think back in the late 2000s, they even came to the U.S. and did some shows with Angel Corpse for that 2007 record, or whenever they toured for it. And I've always heard a bit of that in their sound. So, and that's pretty much what we get here for this record. There are some differences and some nuances. I think it's important to go through their discography and see where they've been. You know, there's been a different lineup in each record. The first two are the most similar to one another, and then things have changed for each record since then. It's a great discography if you're a fan of just death metal. And one of the things you do for pleasure, like I do, is listen to death metal that is it's got a tunnel vision to it. It's very riff obsessed, and it's heavy, and you're going to hear that right here with the preview song that we cut to right now, just to get a sense of what this album is all about. So there are a couple of big changes for this record. I wouldn't say, I don't know how big they are, but the vocalist from Abominator, the main guy, Gillian's main band, has joined on vocals again. He's traded off with the vocalist from Bestial Warlust, depending on the album. They had a session vocalist for the 2018 record, who was quite good, a little more of a guttural style, and this one with Chris Volcano, he has a more of a Dolan kind of feel to his voice. It was certainly more noticeable back on the self-titled album back in 2017, and here he's a little bit more varied. He's doing a few more things. There's some guttural vocals on one song that stand out, and a couple of just different style changes there over time, so that it sounds like it doesn't necessarily sound like too much has changed until you really get into the inflection of the vocals, and it's a big part of the album. I think that he writes really interesting lyrics too, and you can catch some of those just by ear, but if you go back and look at the lyrics that Chris Volcano writes, they're always a little bit extra, a little bit more creative, and that's good to see on a record like this, because for a lot of people it'll feel a bit standard in some sense, because it really does just carry that sort of Immolation-esque groove through it. There's some bolt thrower references here and there. There's sort of a bestial touch to a lot of what this record does, and I think those are obvious enough like entrails to pick through in terms of what this is musically and where the style comes from, and what influences them. But it's more about what the fact that they're able to do it and carry it through and keep it entertaining throughout without dragging on. And I think the interesting thing here is that the production has gotten better, and they've worked on their pacing a little bit so that we get some of these slower songs which are quite effective in their style, and the production values are quite loud and explosive, but they aren't totally blown out. So it's a great sounding record, and it really is for people who obsess over the details of this sort of thing, and it really sticks in its own lane and does it well. It's great to see a band with such a strong personality sort of maintain that personality through 5 records with all different lineups. And I think for me, this is probably one of the best records from the band to date. I really like that self-titled album. There's aspects of this that feel like a return to some of those ideas, maybe less Morbid Angel-esque thoughts and more Angel Corpse style riffs here and there, but overall a great record, a great death metal record, and it should inspire anyone who really loves the subgenre. So for me, it's a high recommendation. This is the kind of stuff that I sit around and listen to for fun and enjoy quite a bit, and so my personal rating is probably a little bit higher, but as far as just recommending this to death metal fans, it's a sure thing from my point of view. So check it out. It comes out on Friday, and read the review if you'd like more details.